we understood what is instructional design. The most important model of instructional design is the ADDI model. As you know, ADDI model or ADDIE stands for Analysis, Design, Development, Implementation and Evaluation. So, in the next few minutes, let us see what this model is all about. The model was created, ADDIE model was created by Center for Education Technology, Florida State University, USA in 1975. So, if you see, it is not a very old model, unlike few of the other models. Now, what it is? A stands for analysis, D, second is the design, third development, fourth implementation, and the last is the evaluation. It is a 5-step model. Let us see each one of them, what it stands and how it's going to be useful, this ADDI model, for developing online courses or in open and distance education. Firstly, analyze. So, under this phase, analyze phase, we intend to analyze what the students or the learners they already know. That's very, very important part. So that, why do we want to analyze that what students, learners already know? So that there is no repetition. That's very, very important. So the learner's background is very important in this step. And then you link it to the new content, new knowledge with the previous one. So let's take an example how this model is used to design and develop online courses. Firstly, you need to understand for whom you are developing this online course. So what you are doing is you are analyzing the students, the learners' previous knowledge, what was their understanding about that course. So that's very, very important. First step in the analysis part. From here, we move to the second part or the second component of the model, that is the design. What is design? Design, if you see on your screens, is guided by the learning agenda or the goals. Many people say learning agenda, learning outcome, learning goals, objectives, and so on and so forth. So the second stage is decided or guided by the learning agenda. In this stage, it is very important to consider what all is needed to achieve the goals. So if you are designing an online course, what is your goal and what do you want to achieve? That's important part under this component, the design component. The elements of the design component which can include, which should include a statement of expected learning outcomes. As you see, in all the learning materials developed by the open universities or the open and distance learning institutions in the print material, the first and the foremost point which is given is the learning outcome. So, even for the online course, under the design, one has to clearly define your learning outcomes or the learning agenda. From here, we move to the development part. What is develop? Development is basically, if you see it on your screens, it is giving shape to the design by bringing the information, the data and products of the first two stages together. As you know, what are the first two stages? Analysis and design. So based on the analysis and the design component, you are developing the information and the data. That's what you do in the development stage. So, for an online course, how it will be useful? You are developing the online course based on your learning outcomes, based on the students' learners' needs. That's what we analyze, the background of the learners in the first stage. Then you are developing your course. So that's the important part in the development component. So what it is? This phase actually comprises drafting the instructional design, producing, and then evaluating. That's the advantage of the development part. Again, we can see you are developing the online course on university's learning management system, or you are hiring an external management system like you are doing on a Blackboard or a Moodle or so on and so forth. So those things you are bringing the information during this development part. Next, in the ADDIE model is the implementation. That is, how do you implement it? Implement is a stage for putting the plan or design into action. So, once you are developing an online course, implementation is then you open up to the learners. That's what your design is implementing, or your design is going into the action part of it. That's very, very important. Again, the implementation. The whole online course, the quality of the online course will depend upon how do you implement it. That's another important area where one has to keep it in mind. And the last in this model is the evaluation part. That is, evaluate. Your design is in this stage very meticulously evaluated for its effectiveness. Suppose I make an online course, I follow all the components like analyze, design, I develop it perfectly, but at the end, I see when I evaluate, it is not effective. Maybe the course is not opening, or the font size is less, or the color is different. Students, they are not able to open the videos or listen to the audio. That's what the evaluation, we do it in the evaluate part. Very important under this component is how we include, or how will you have the formative and summative assessment of the learning outcomes of the students. In a classroom, if you see, formative and summative evaluation is quite easy because as teachers we keep on doing that. But in an online course, it becomes little more, I will not say difficult, but you have to have different evaluation strategies for that. That is important. How do you do it? Can you give some questions in between? You need mentors to evaluate what the students have learned. And this component of the model gives that. How do you evaluate the whole thing? So, this model actually, the ADDIE model, helps in overcoming the limit of linear way of going. Evaluation can also use for the second round of the analysis, design, development, implementation. And it gives the scope of improving the whole thing. So, improving the whole online course or improving the printed self-learning material which in an open and distance education institutions one develop. At the end, a very important statement long back, we are in 2021, long back in 1989, and I quote, Van Patten has said, again I quote, whereas physicians engineer health, architects engineer space, the role of instructional designers or instructional designer engineers, they see the human performance. This is a very important statement made by Van Patten, and it gives the importance of how you design your instruction based on the ADDIE model. Again, the slide or this statement shows that physicians, they are helping maintain each one of us health. What architecture's role is, how they create the space. And the most important part, when we design our instruction properly, in an effective manner, it will enhance the human performance. And that's what the whole instructional design concept is all about. What is instructional design? I'm sure you must have heard about this word instructional design earlier. And some of the learnings you have already done. That what is instructional design? Now, all of you know that the whole education in our classrooms or in online learning, it has shifted from teacher classroom behavior to the learning outcomes of the students. This new nomenclature, that is instructional design, has appeared in professional literature, and as you see on the screen, that is instructional design. What is instructional design? Thought of it anytime? There are two words in this. One is instruction and another is design. Simple. I'm sure all of you know the meanings of instruction and design. In instruction, in simple meaning, if we say, is a statement or a set of statements or do's and don'ts. Each one of us, especially as teachers, we keep giving instruction in our classroom to our students. At home, we give instruction to our children, what to do and what not to do. So, the dictionary meaning of instruction is a detailed information or guidelines on how something should be done or how something should be operated upon. Now, coming to the second word, that is the design. Again, very common word. Each one of us, we use this word design in many ways. The dictionary meaning of design is a plan or a drawing produced to show the look and function or working of, let's say, any building, or let's say any garment or any other object. So the best example of design, as we see the definition, is building. You create a design. Based on the design, your buildings are created. Or even in the classroom, if we'll say, the classroom is designed depending upon the level of the students. That is, if the student is of kindergarten, the table and the chair will be different, and if the student is of higher grade, the kind of chairs and the tables will be different. So, now, can you see or can you think of what is instructional design means? Instructional design, there are several models of instructional design. If you see it on your screens, I have just listed in this video, just 5 of them. But there are several other models of instructional design. So the first is the ADDIE model, which many world over institutions, training organizations, they are adopting. The second model is by Dick and Carey. The third is the component display theory by Merrill. The next one, the important one, is Guyne's 9 events of learning. And the last is ARCS model. These are just 5 major models which we will be just in a very brief learning about it. The rest you can see, go to internet, read them, and you will understand on your own. The first is the ADDIE model, which has 5 stages. What are the 5 stages? Analysis. Second is design, third is develop, fourth implementation, and the last is the evaluation. This you will be learning more in next 5 to 10 minutes in detail. Why? Because as said earlier, this is the model used world over by all educational institutions, whether designing the instruction for classroom, for a formal system, or for open and distance learning institution, or for designing, developing the online courses. The next is the Guyne's theory, which is popularly known as Guyne's theory, developed by Robert Guyne. And it can be applied, again this model can be applied in the training and in the formal classrooms. What is this model? If you see, it is known as Guyne's 9 events of instruction and goes from gain attention, if you see the lowest one, to the highest one, that is enhance retention and transfer. Very quickly we will see what this Guyne's proposed, what he proposed, the 9 activities so that learning takes place. As we said earlier, that the whole emphasis has shifted from teaching to learning. So Guyne's 9 steps of instruction also ensures learning. The first is gain attention, where the students as preparation for learning, which is basically called an induction in the common term. Second is inform students of the objectives. In this stage, one should make sure that the students, the learners, they are aware of the expected learning outcome so that they make deliberate attempts to achieve the targets. Very important. If you will see in all the self-learning material, the first thing in the unit or in the course beginning is written learning outcomes. So learners, they read that and the material informs the learners about the objectives, that what they are going to learn through this unit. Even in online courses, the objectives, the learning outcomes are given. The third step, if you will see, is stimulate recall of prior learning. Here it is very, very necessary, essential, so that the students are able to connect to the new knowledge with the existing knowledge. Very often seen in the classroom teaching and learning. The next step is present stimulus material. So content should be preferably presented in smaller chunks. The next is provide learner guidance. In this stage, guidance is provided to the students with examples, cases, diagrams, illustrations, and so on to enrich the learning. And you have seen it in the classroom because all of us, we belong to the formal system sometime or the other. So we see that the teacher provides the learner all these things. The next is elicit performance. What does that mean? In this step or in this stage, students are engaged with learning activities that help to recall, apply and utilize the learning outcomes. So the students, they are showing what they have learned, that what they have performed. Next is the provide feedback. All of us, we know as teachers, they provide feedback in the classroom. We all do to the students. Very important step of learning. You are providing immediate positive or a corrective feedback to the students so that they learn. And if something went wrong, they can rectify it. Next is assess performance. Assess performance is testing of the knowledge, rather not only the knowledge, the learning outcomes. And learning outcomes, all of you know, are written, placed at various levels. The ninth step, the last step in this Guyne's model is enhance retention and transfer. This is the final stage which tries to help students retain the learning. What we do? We summarize here. We use concept maps or visual memory so that the learning is transferred. This is a brief about Guyne's model of 9 steps of instruction. The next model of instructional design is Dick and Carey model. Again, it is a 9-step process for planning and designing effective learning. So if you see the first point, it says you are identifying the instructional goals, which were already you see in the Guyne's 9 steps of instruction. You are, from here, when you identify the instructional goals, you are going deeper into it. Can you analyze those learning goals? So on and so forth. So that's very important. So if you will see with the arrows, Dick and Carey model connects with each and every component of learning. And then at the end, if you will see on the top box, it says revise instruction. You can revise each and every component of Dick and Carey model. That's very, very important. Another model is Merrill's component display theory. The full name is David Merrill. David Merrill component display theory was developed in 1980. It was rather early 1980s when this model was developed. And if you will see on the screen, there are 5 major components. One is facts, another concepts, third principles, next procedure, and then the processes. So under the facts, what do you find it out? That simple numbers, let's say 1 to 100 numbers, this is a fact. Or historical data, like Guyana got independence in 1966 and republic, and it was made republic in 1970. This is a historical fact. And if I say example of India, so it says India got independence in 1947. So these are certain facts which the learners should know. Second is, from here we move on to the concepts. For example, how do you fly? I just gave an example of flying. You can have any other example. So that is a concept. Third is the rules and the regulation which comes under the principles. Next is the procedure. Like another simple very example, how do you are applying for a passport? There are certain procedures that when you go to apply for the passport, that comes under procedure. That's what learning is. And the last is the process. And a very simple, very easy example which I had listed here is, for example, baking a cake. It involves process. So the Merrill's component display theory has given us 5 components, and it says the design of the instruction should be based on these 5 components. The last one is known as the ARCS model. And if you will see the ARCS model, what it stands for. A for attention, R for relevance, C for confidence, and S for satisfaction. This model was developed by John Keller, who introduced, the whole model is based on the motivational model of instructional design and developed in 1979 by John Keller. The model is, as I said just now, is based on the motivation. The focus of John Keller in this model was on developing a motivated learner. So he developed a 4-stage model which comprises, I repeat again, attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction. What is attention? The purpose of this stage is to seek and hold attention of the learning task of the learners. And if you will see, compare it with the Guyon's 9 steps of instruction, the first one was gain attention. So this is taken from there or similar to that Guyon's 9 step, the first part. The second is the relevance. In this stage intends to convince the learners about the utility of the content in real life situation. Many of the things we learn, maybe they are not relevant to it, but you have to relate it to the day-to-day life situations, and that's what this model says about learning. The third is confidence. In this stage of the model, an attempt is made to develop confidence among the learners regarding their ability to achieve the learning targets. See how different this model has been developed. None of the other models have this part, that is the confidence part, and that's what the ARCS model is based on, the motivation aspect, motivation of the students. The next step and the last is satisfaction. Here, learners should be satisfied with their learning outcomes. The satisfaction would then lead to greater motivation to learn. That's what the most important part of ARCS model is. These were the 5 different models of instructional design, but no one single model is universally accepted. But ADDI model is accepted by several educational institutions. It all depends that where, how we use these models.